You know, it doesn't really matter if the team objectively sucks or is just annoyingly good. The Dodgers and Astros are, of course, in the headlines again for this video. I'm sorry.
Fly ball. Did he get enough? Manny Machado stands alone as the Padres' all-time home run leader.
Goodness, Jim Joyce.
And that pitch is hit to deep center field. Back goes Lofton to the track, to the wall. Cameron has done it. My Cameron.
Because right now, Yordan Alvarez is ironically the Dodgers' biggest mistake. The one that got away. No. But you're probably not even thinking about that because Dalton Rushing is busy trying to take Will Smith's job. No, not that Will Smith, this Will Smith. And honestly, both situations are ridiculous because Yordan is already sitting at 11 home runs, pacing for roughly 68 to 70 bombs over the course of this full season if he can keep up this pace. Even if nobody actually expects it to hold, I at least start side-eyeing Barry Bonds' record like, getting a little close there, buddy. And this is exactly why the whole trade Yordan conversation even popped up with Talking Baseball. If you listen to Trevor Puth,
I'm just joking about him being traded, but I also started to really think about it too. He's got 2 years left after this at $26 million per. He would fetch some prospects or whatever you wanted. I mean, this guy is essentially a top three. He's a top three hitter in all of baseball.
he threw it out there as a reality that I think people do consider. Because this isn't about the Astros offense. Their bats are fine. This is a perfect example of why pitching matters more than people want to admit. You cannot expect your lineup to go and score 6 runs every single night because your rotation and bullpen are allergic to outs. That's just not sustainable. Yordan is not the problem. He is the reason the problem doesn't look worse. And yes, if you ever traded him, the return would have to be blockbuster absurd. It's not 2 bullpen arms and a nice prospect. No, you are asking for a team to give up their legitimate ace, their number 2 guy, and probably their top prospect, because that's what Houston kind of actually needs right now, especially with all the guys they've gotten rid of in the past few years and how bad it's looking on record right now. They need frontline pitching, real pitchers. And honestly, right now, there's not a single contender, and I say contender lightly because it's April, with that kind of pitching depth is willing to give up. That's why the trade doesn't exactly work. There isn't really a team that fits the bill, which is why all the trade Yordan talk sounds smart until you really think about it and go through all other 29 teams and realize after 12 seconds, what's the point of us talking about this? Because while people are trying to invent trade packages, he's hitting 326 on base almost half the time, and he's slugging 756. He's leading baseball with a WRC plus of 233, and he has a 2.1 WAR before May. And that part really matters because 2.1 WAR before May is not a great start. That is Hall of Fame pace. That is something that Willie Mays had, Mickey Mantle had, Jackie Robinson had, Johnny Bench, Barry Bonds, Albert Pujols, Mike Trout. Do I need to keep going? That's the kind of start where by June, people really stop asking if you're having a good season and start asking if we're watching one of those seasons. You know what I mean? And what makes Yordan even crazier, he's doing this at DH. Now, I understand where you might think, we've seen this show before, right? As in Shohei. No, Shohei's also a pitcher, which makes him especially special. We'll stick with that. Whereas Yordan's putting up these numbers just swinging a bat, nothing else, which makes that room way smaller when it comes to comparison for that 2.1 WAR before May. Now, you're talking Edgar Martinez, Frank Thomas, David Ortiz, and ironically, again, Shohei Ohtani, but again, he's a pitcher. Guys whose entire job description was basically just ruining baseballs for a living. That's the room Yordan is sitting in right now. That is not maybe we should trade him production. That is build the entire offense around him and pray production. But honestly, he has 2 years left on his contract. That's the reason why we're sparking this, and they're under 500. As ridiculous as Yordan has been, you know who's even more insane right now? Dalton Rushing. Not Trout, not Ben Rice, not Shohei. Dalton Rushing. Because those 8 games he's played, he has 7 home runs. That's not a typo, and neither is this. This is 140 home run pace if he were to play every single game this season. And yes, I know, small sample size, 8 games, relax. Okay, but Baseball Savant page says the production is real. If you look at the exit velocity, it's real. The barrel rate is there. The hard hit profile is real. This isn't fake hot streak baseball. This is a guy actively stealing jobs. Now, obviously, he's not playing 162 games, as I said. He's not even playing every day. That's fantasy land. But hey, stay with me in fantasy land for a second. If he played half a season and somehow kept this pace, you're talking roughly 68 home runs. That alone is MVP territory, right? Now, you get a ridiculous question that sometimes becomes a real baseball question. Would that be the first MVP player who is literally a platoon player only? Because if you have a guy that literally hits over 60 bombs while not even playing full time, how do you comprehend voting against that? And at this point, another uncomfortable question shows up, which sparks the thumbnail of this entire video. Is Will Smith worth paying? Because if Dalton Rushing is doing this and Shohei owns DH spot forever, at least for the next 10 years, eventually the Dodgers have to stop pretending like this is a normal problem. All right, now let's go back to reality. Look what's actually happening live right now and is more realistic. Munetaka Murakami, this is a real AL MVP wildcard. I'm not saying he's Yordan by any means, but we have to acknowledge how special it is right now and what he's doing. Because while everybody keeps defaulting to Yordan as the MVP, as of now, in April, Murakami has 10 home runs in 24 games, and he's currently sitting on a 5 home run streak, 3 away from tying the MLB record. And let's not ignore this part. He's doing this as an MLB rookie. That is crazy. Yeah, sounds like Nick Kurtz. Anybody who's not performing the same way that Murakami is right now. This pace that he is at sets him at 68 to 70 home run conversation. Literally the same territory as Barry Bonds and as Yordan. And ironically, Dalton Rushing, if you really want to count him in there, but I don't know what the Dodgers are going to do there. And unlike the random April heaters, this actually looks legit, as we do have a little bit more, how do we say, sample size from MPB, even though that is kind of like a glorified AAA. The power is real, the swings are violent, the damage is very loud when he makes that proper contact, and honestly, I feel like just setting stone that the MPB might be the best farm system in baseball. We've gotten Ohtani, now we got Murakami. Who's next? The only issue is he plays for the White Sox. Now, not to bag on Southside Chicago. Like, don't get mad at me, guys. I just need to put this out there. Every home run still feels like he's trying to carry a refrigerator uphill by himself. To be fair, I know Miguel Vargas has started heating up a bit. Colson Montgomery is finally showing signs of life, as he's been a well-anticipated top prospect for them. So Murakami at least has some help now, but if Chicago keeps hovering around 500 and typically they're below, the MVP conversation gets harder, because baseball writers seem to love to pretend that teams' records should decide individual rewards. And I don't agree with it, and some people would argue that has nothing to do with it. Let's be honest, I feel like there's a lot of other players, especially ones with clout, that are on a specific team, earn MVP votes over a team that doesn't have the long history of winning. And speaking of which, no, not Judge, but I was kind of hinting there. Cal Raleigh. And yes, I know it's been ugly. I mean, hard to watch ugly. For a while, watching Cal hit felt like watching somebody trying to start a lawnmower for 3 hours. I'm happy today because at least he's played 3 games at home and has 3 straight home runs. He's now up to 5 total home runs. Is that anywhere compared to the other guys? No, but he was a runner-up MVP for the AL last year, and at this pace he's looking to be right around 31 home runs, which honestly feels like his bare minimum floor. I mean, I would expect him to actually be around 40 to 45 home runs this year, but what I honestly want to see out of Cal in order to even be in the conversation with these other two is have his average closer to 300. Before that can happen, the strikeout rate has got to come down, and whether or not he's going to be able to figure that out, I'm not sure. And honestly, it should, though, because league-wide, especially with the new rules, hitters are getting more help than they ever have, which brings us to ABS. If you guys didn't know, or you're kind of casually a fan, ABS is automated ball strikes. So basically there's technology now that can read their strike zone based on the batter and then tell you if it's a ball or a strike, and batters or catchers or pitchers or whoever want can tap their helmets, tap their heads, and challenge the call if they think it's a ball, if they call it a strike, or if it's a strike and they called it a ball. Well, apparently the solution to offense in Major League Baseball was stop calling balls strikes, and revolutionary stuff started. So what do I mean by that? From 2021 through 2025, league walk rates mostly lived around like 7.8% and maybe 8.7%. That was the high back in 2021. Pretty normal, pretty stable through all those years. Then 2026 shows up, and now we're sitting at 9.8 to 10% walk rate. That's a real jump. And I know it only sounds like 1.2 or 1.5%, but it's obviously not random. It's a huge spike, and this is the biggest change in baseball for, I mean, what were we talking about? The actual reviews were implemented, which was on calls on the bases. That's not guys are seeing better reaction. That's pitchers losing a little bit of that borderline strike call that they've been kind of living on for years. And it turns out if you stop rewarding pitchers for 6 inches off the plate, hitters tend to just walk more because they don't have to worry about it getting called. Crazy concept, right? Here's an example. CJ Abrams, he's doubled his walk rate this season alone. On top of that, small sample size, but Jordan Walker, his chase rate has also dropped significantly this year. I'm assuming feeling more comfortable in being able to call it a ball if he needs to, versus just getting stuck with whatever the umpire calls. Disciplined hitters just got harder to put away, and guys who already controlled the zone suddenly became even more annoying for anybody who's on the mound. That changes games. More deep counts, more walks, more traffic, more starters getting pulled in the fifth and then have to pretend like they're fine with it. That matters because people hear robot umps and think it's just a weird tech story. It's not. It changes offenses. It changes bullpen usage. It changes roster construction. That is real baseball that you have to process now in a whole different light. And honestly, ABS might be the only thing offsetting the normal of everybody throwing 102 miles per hour, because pitchers can't just miss off the plate and be rewarded for it anymore. They have to throw a strike. Now, while all of this is happening, the standings are also getting kind of weird. The Braves are leading the NL East after last year's and the year before kind of a rough patch. The Dodgers and the Padres are tied in the West because apparently nobody knows how to be civil in that division. And the A's are leading the AL West, which still feels weird, but it is true. And the top two teams for the last 4 years have been Seattle and Houston. They're both under 500. Texas is lurking for second, but I don't know what it is. They're doing good, but there's just no real excitement there, if you ask me. And the AL West right now feels like 7 guys fighting over 1 parking spot. Nobody really looks effectively dominant. In fact, it's one of the more uglier records in all of the divisions. All right, I had to fix my chair. Anyways, the biggest thing that I really want you guys to focus on, though, is the NL Central. I made a post about this on X yesterday because the division is stupid close. The Reds are in the lead as far as last time I checked. The Cubs right now are right behind them. Milwaukee's hanging in there as well. We're only like 1 or 2 games behind. Ironically, the team that was expected to be the worst and was going to be rebuilding from scratch is St. Louis, and they just seem to refuse to die. That's baseball at its best. Granted, it's not my division, so I don't really care, but nobody's comfortable. Everybody's kind of pissed off. There's been fights a lot this year. It's perfect. I love it. But you know what isn't perfect? This rule that I had never heard of before.
Right back, and it is caught. No. It's in his shirt. Logan Gilbert wore that one. That was something that you will not see again.
Let's not overlook how much this probably hurt. Absolute missile right back at Logan. He's trying to just defend himself, and you can see it go in the shirt right there. And it was on the back side of his left hip, and he couldn't find it. It kind of comes back around. It never came out.
I mean, if you're the A's, you're probably saying, well, he didn't catch the ball. You can't catch the ball with your jersey. It's been ruled a base hit.
Logan Gilbert, catch but not a catch. Now, I understand the rule now. I do. The ball has to be secured with the glove or your bare hand for it to be a catch. Fine. I guess I give credit to the umpires. He knew the rule and enforced it immediately, so I have to give props to that. Of course, that is their job, but sometimes stuff is so weird you just don't know how to rule it, even though there was discussion after. If the ball never touches the ground and he secures it after it gets stuck in his jersey, how is that not a catch? I understand that we want to avoid players just opening up their shirt and catching balls into their jersey, but come on, what if he used his hat? And are we saying that really changes the play at all? Because if he caught it like with his armpit and it just happened to go on the inside of his sleeve and he didn't have to dig it out, he just pulled it, I bet you they're gonna call that a catch. Right? So if you're asking me, that should be an out. I am a little bit biased, but I think if you wear one in the stomach and then your shirt happens to back you up, give it to him. This just feels like one of those Rob Manfred rules that should be fixed while we're busy changing everything else in baseball before the next lockout. Just throwing that out there. Yordan is carrying Houston. Dalton Rushing is actively stealing jobs. Murakami is proving MVP might actually be a really good farm system for baseball. Raleigh might be waking up. There's a lot of mites in this one, right? And the ABS is possibly making up for the fact that every pitcher can throw over 100 these days. The NL Central is chaos, and I highly recommend you guys watching those games because it's going back and forth. Even the worst teams are doing really good. And Logan Gilbert makes balls disappear, and it doesn't really count for an out. So baseball is beautiful. Subscribe, like, I love you, and I'll catch you all later.